Fourth lesson, change, multiplicity, causality. We draw attention in our first spiritual training to the importance of opening the heart. You remember we have a little spiritual formation at the beginning of each lesson in the 2 first years. We drew attention in our first spiritual training to the importance of opening the heart. We are often too full of ourselves to the point that there is no room for anything else. And if there is anything else, everything is judged by our attachment to ourselves. By all that we do, we too often seek our interest, which means that our opening of heart is limited, narrowed, we might say, to ourselves. In the second spiritual formation, and with the previous courses, we saw that there is something greater than us, that is to say the truth, which is God, basically, for whom we are made, in which only our true happiness is found, because our heart will never be satisfied by what is finished if it is made for infinity. This is why we are very often disappointed with the goods of this earth, even very large, like a human person, because we are not made absolutely for that. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't love each other, on the contrary. But we must not take it a goal, put our whole heart into it, as if all our happiness was there, because we are not meant to put our whole heart into it. This means that we must necessarily establish an order of values, because from the moment there are different values, and one must prevail over the others in our choice, because it is made for us, and we are made for it. It will have to be placed at the head, and all the others in order of importance according to the order of their own values. I repeat, this means that we must necessarily establish an order of values, because from the moment there are different values, and one must prevail over the others in our choice, because it is made for us, and we are made for it. It will have to be placed at the head, and all the others in order of importance according to the order of their own values. This is what we saw at the last spiritual interview, when we were invited to reflect on this order of values in our life, on the need to put first what is first, second what is second, and last what is last. Today, now, we are going to start to see how to make this great program. So, the goal of which we are made, and in which our true happiness consists, is the truth, which is God, basically, which is everything, and more than anything, as we have glimpsed, we can consider the most beautiful thing that we know on earth, or that we do not know but which we dream of, and can add so many qualities, and even more, and always more. We will be still very far from what God is, infinitely far, you know. This forces that God exceeds without comparison all that one can imagine, all that one can conceive of more beautiful, larger, more marvelous, more splendid, more fantastic, more extraordinary. We can add to it, add so much and so much, and that ad infinitum. We can spend an eternity imagining the greatest and the most beautiful things about God. We will still be far from what He is in Himself. We will never realize, we will never fully understand who God is, even in heaven, if we have the grace to go there, because He is infinite. It is only He who can grasp Himself as He is, because He is infinite intelligence. It is extremely important to understand this, to set us on the road to this extraordinarily desirable being. For it is good to say that God is made for us, and that we are made for Him. But that is not enough to orient our whole life, because the life of a man is not nothing. A man does not orient all his life towards a single good, which he considers the greatest, according to which he will direct everything else, without serious reason. And that is why the first step in the Christian life, and which must last all our life, is to start to seek to know God very seriously, because it is only when we have started to discover Him, to understand what a wonderful being He is, that we will be animated with the best motives to direct us to Him, to orient our whole life towards Him. We already know that He is worth it, because there is no greater good, but we must always discover Him more, to ignite our hearts with a love proportional to this infinite good, and always greater. The beautiful word of human love, you know every day, I love you more, today more than yesterday, and much less than tomorrow. If we may apply it to human love, which can grow also every day, how much more may we apply it to the love of God, since God is an incomparably greater and more beautiful good than the most beautiful human being. This is what we call the charity, that love to which God calls us with Him. We often imagine the Christian life as a set of duties to be accomplished for an uncompromising master, to whom we will have to be accountable one day for our action. And happy we are if we find ourselves in a pleasant state to continue loving this that we used to love on this earth, where God would watch over us with a benevolent eye, like a good daddy is reward the children. We understand how far we are from the truth with such conceptions. You only have to look at Jesus on the cross to understand how wrong this idea is. Jesus on the cross, it is God made man who gives himself out of love to each of us. It is God completely torn apart by those he loves, and who says nothing, does not fight back in the least, and let nail his open arms to show us how far his love goes for each of us. And he expects a similar love from us, God. Religion, as John Paul II said, is a love story between me and Jesus. We also see charity as good deeds for the poor. That is too, but we understand how. That's it too, but we understand how. The love of the poor is the love which we love so much God that we cannot help loving those who are in misery, in misfortune. When we are happy, when we are inundated with love, we cannot bear to see someone unhappy. It is a charity for the poor, an overabundance of love for God which can only spill over into our miserable brothers. We are so happy in this love of God. Charity is the most extraordinary love that can exist. Unfortunately, often love in this world is translated into sexual terms. And even today, between people of the same sex, to understand a little what love in God is, we must try to refine in our life moments where we live the pure love. As with our mother, our brother, our sister, with a friend, it is all the more obvious that God has nobody. We understand that to love God, our human love is not enough. Charity is a love that comes from God. And that is why it must be asked. It is not a natural love, which would be enough. We will understand which will never love God as he deserves to be loved. God must give it to us so that we can love him as he is worthy to be loved, as a sovereign good, as he alone knows how to love this sovereign good. One would may then say, what are you looking for to know him, to ignite of love for him? If he gives us his love himself, there is no need to tire us. Well, because his love is not a simple physical force, is not a physical attraction. We are not inert beings. It is a love which must be lived freely, because love must to be essentially free. Otherwise, if it is lived under duress, it will not be love, but duress. We will not act out of love, but out of duress. So that it is really love to what we are called with God, which has nothing to do with stupid obedience to rules that we do not understand, so that our life in God, to which we are called, be truly a life of love. It must be free. However, to be free, it must come from ourselves. We must want to love from ourselves. Otherwise, we will not love. We are not talking about these lower desires. We understand that this is a desire of the highest and most noble, which does not come from what we feel sensibly, emotionally, but from a higher love which proceeds from a free decision in consideration of the highest truth. To be free, this love has to come from ourselves. Hence the importance of knowing God with our highest faculties. That is to say, in truth and wisdom, where we will understand who God is, and from this knowledge of a being who is so wonderful, will spring an extraordinary love. To the measure of this extraordinary being, we thus see how the efforts we have to give for the knowledge of God does not take anything away from the love that He wishes give us to love Him with a higher love, because this higher love that He wants to give us is a love that must be lived in our freedom, and our freedom comes from ourselves and from what we know, because it is when we understand, it is when we are convinced that a being is extraordinarily beautiful, that we are going to set out for Him and order everything to Him. You understand? Hence the importance too of asking Him for this higher knowledge in proportion to this love for Him. Ultimately, it will be a participation of His knowledge and love to elevate us to this being far too high for our little nature. This knowledge and love is what is called faith and charity. Supernatural virtues that can only come from God, gifts from Him for us to enable us to live what we are called to so high. It is the first engine, if we can say, the first motive which must lead us to orient our whole life towards this marvelous being. This is the upward spiritual that we talked about. The knowledge leading the love of God, the love of God burning us with greater ardor to know Him more and love Him even more, and so on. Love must grow, because a love that no longer grows is love that is already dead, especially when it comes to a being like God, who deserves to be loved infinitely. St. Augustine specifies it to us in one of his concise formulas. The measure of loving God is to love without measure. Very well. The measure of loving God is to love without measure. We will be able to love Him so much and more. It will be always possible to love Him more because He is infinite and He deserves to be loved infinitely. And that is why we speak of an upward spiral of knowledge and love. And here we join what the Church says at the beginning of her catechism, that we were created to know and love God. It is there where is all our happiness, which begins here and will end in the fullness in heaven if we follow the road well. Thus, we see that the Christian program is something very simple and very demanding at the same time. It is very simple because it is enough to love. It is enough to do all your actions out of love for God. And it is very demanding because it is a question of loving a being of finite beauty. And we understand that this is not to be done as with just anyone. It is also very difficult because God never imposes Himself. Love must be free, as we have just noted, and therefore it must come from ourselves. God will never force us, and therefore all of our Christian life is in our hands, so to speak. God comes from His omnipotence of wisdom and love to second our projects in Him as soon as we put them into practice, but the decision comes back to us in their own right because of our freedom, which God has wanted since always. From there, refusal is very easy, and this is which is called mortal sin. It is very easy to fall into death in the supernatural life because it consists of love, and one can very easily stop loving. And there is no half measure. We sometimes hear people say, "Oh, me, a folding seat up there, that will be enough in heaven." There is no half measure because when one is called to such a great love, it is completely absurd to prefer a ridiculous attachment to it, and any attachment to something other than God. When one is made for God is, for to take an example, like a man who would have the most beautiful woman in the world and would prefer to attach himself to a cockroach. Mortal sin is to refuse this proposition of infinite love of God and to prefer a finished love to it, because life in God comes from this love. And to refuse this love is to refuse life, and therefore to fall into death, spiritual death. Mortal sin is also, for example, killing or committing adultery, but it is above all a hard diversion from God towards a creature in contempt of God. One could object that we are not free, like to choose the creature in preference to the Creator. But what is to be free, if not to be able to choose the best? And if the infinite good is offered to us, how can we say that our freedom is constrained by this infinite good? How can we be constrained in this infinite? An infinite which lacks nothing that we can want. We still understand that this love must be free and disinterested, because as much we will retain love for ourselves, as much it will be lacking in the infinite love to which we are called, which is total gift from one to the other. That is why Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus, Doctor of Love, said, "The love is to give everything and give oneself." Love is essentially a gift, a total gift from oneself to the other. Finally, since love must be essentially free, and Christian life consists essentially of love, it follows that Christian life is essentially free. This is what made St. Augustine say, "Love and do what you want. Love and do what you want." Because from the moment we achieve this sublime love of God for us and of us for God, by total gift from one to the other, no matter what we do, if everything is lived in the most beautiful love. Wonderful. How far we are from this caricature of a tyrant good God. It's quite the opposite. It is the one commandment of God of Christ, which sums up everything else. Love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and give your life, your soul, for those we love. So boils down to the law and the prophets, says Jesus. Love and do what you want. Therefore, the acts of the Christian have value only through charity. So that an action of brilliance in the eyes of the world without charity will have no value for eternal life, and an insignificant action in the eyes of the world with much love from God can have immeasurable value. It is a love that has nothing to do with natural love, as St. Paul teaches us. 1 Corinthians 13. When I would speak the languages of men and of angels, if I don't have charity, I'm a resonant brass or a resounding cymbal. When you have the gift of prophecy and know all the mysteries and all the science, when I would have the fullness of earth to transport mountains, if I don't have charity, I am nothing. When I would distribute all my goods in alms, when I would deliver my body to the flames, if I do not have charity, it is of no use to me. It's a supernatural love above all natural, and that's why we must ask for it. Let us see how far the values of the Christian life can be far from the values of the world. In the world, we seek what has a lot of brilliance, the actions where we will be the best in view, the best appreciated, but which are often based on self-love, the superficial, the apparent, which has no consistency, whereas in Christian life we sometimes experience heartbreaking humiliations, but in which we can to live the greatest love, which will be manifested in eternal life. And already on this earth, happy to live what is most beautiful, and in heaven, happy to live forever at the end of the growing spiral with this incomparably beautiful being. And so the question to ask yourself, how is my life oriented in relation to God, and how to orient it better? All right, it's the end of this first part. Soon for the second.